Oh, we just got one? Okay, Dr. Bailey, right? And if you're a Community United member, board member, or a past board member, please stand so that people know who you are. Good. So I'm going to, before I introduce our speaker, I'm going to say a couple things that we need to know for tonight. I'm told the men's restroom is out to the left, women's to the right. Also with that, if you look at your name tags, you realize they're colored. When we say switch, you have to find your table in that color. You have to sit there. Those of you who have black and blue, light blue, we're going to sit at the vacant tables. Also, those of you who need CEUs afterwards, please see Sharon. She'll help you out with that piece. I thought I'd give you a little brief history of how to get to this point. Community United been around a little over 4 years. Staff? 4 years? And doing this particular conversation, we come to existence due to concerns in our community and our schools. So it was a very active bunch. Last year we did Color of Fear presentation. It was really I'm going to be honest with you, it was a heart attack on your own heart or consciousness, I would say. But the year before that we did Deborah Lee, Dismantling Racism, and this year we have Anew Koen here, who's going to do his presentation as well. So this is actually our third year of presentations. We almost had a whole year just of conversations internally from school to community before we got to this point. So we're going to continue to do this, promote wellness within this community semi-urban Avenue area, and we definitely need the help of those of you out there. We need the youth. I'm glad to see the kids here. You are kids, young 18, you are kids. At the same time, it's your energy that gives us energy to continue to do. And in the future, I would like to see more of you help us to make my community a better community. Did I miss out anything before I go on? I don't really need this, do I? I'll set that down, huh? I got a big mic.
You can project.
I know. Okay. So, as we continue to have this conversation, before I introduce Anew Koen, I keep saying his name without giving his big speech, but I'm going to give it to him because he's due to his credit when I give his speech. I'm glad to be here. I'm glad to be part of this community. I'm glad you're here. It's like you're glad to be part of this community. And I would hope that we continue this conversation for years to come, no matter, has nothing to do with age, color, sex. It just means our community, we continue to talk about things that happen to our community. Now, the big speech. Anew Koen is an energetic presenter, a powerful communicator, and dynamic teacher. He is educational who spans the North American continent. The continent. Anew integrates his ability as an improvisational comedian, large group facilitator, keynote speaker, and classroom teacher to captive and educate his audience. Anew serves as the EEO Affirmative Action Diversity Coordinator for Anoka County, Minnesota, where he educates the community about the law and diversity issues. Prior to his work with Anoka County, Anew was an academic dean at the National American University, where he inspired mid-career adults to live their dreams and reach their potential. Anew believes that people possess the ability to empower themselves and believe is made manifest by his unique style of teaching. Students, teachers, ladies and gentlemen, Anew Koen.
I have to say, it's very embarrassing to hear the things that you wrote about yourself read back to you. I do have to say that I am very humbled by the request for my presence here to be helpful as you continue to create a dynamic and powerful community. Your presence here speaks volumes about the power of the individual making change. And so I want to be supportive in that change. I want to give you a heads up on some things about my presentation. If you came looking for facts and figures and statistics and ways to use data agenda to change yourself or change the world. That's not what we will be doing. What I do want to do is give us ways to think about how we can engage in a conversation together. One of the things that, first of all, how many people have been in a diversity training before? Raise your hand, please. Okay, I got a lot of work ahead of me. I have to heal those hurts. Because I personally hate diversity training. Yes. And I know you're like, how is that possible? Isn't that what you do? Isn't that what we're here to do today? But there are 3 reasons why I hate diversity training. First of all, what typically happens when they call me is they call me into an organization. And when I get to that organization, I am there because one person messed up. Instead of having the courage to talk to that one person, they bring everybody together to talk about that one person who messed up. And the ironic thing about it is that the one person who messed up goes through the whole training, and they're like, why do we even do that? Right? The second reason that I don't like diversity training is typically an organizer will go to a conference and they'll hear someone like me, and they will, in my vernacular, get saved. They will see the light. And so they take that new convert salvation and they want to save everybody else. And so they make us go through these trainings. The third reason that I don't like diversity trainings is because the trainers themselves are problematic. Right? They come into a place like they have no problems. They come in on their white horse and, they have all the answers and you are nothing. Right? So those are some reasons that I don't like diversity training. So what I would like to do with you is engage in a conversation. And I'd like for you to walk with me as we have this conversation together. Can we do that? Can we do that? Yeah. All right. So to get started, I know that we had dinner, and I know what happens when I have dinner. I get sleepy. So what I'd like you to do is to help me, because I'm an energy vampire, which means that I get my energy from you. All right? And so I need to do a temperature check to see where your energy is, to see how much work I need to do. All right? And it's important for you to know about me that I am a teacher. And I spent 8 years in the classroom. Those first 3 years, I knew nothing. The last 5 years, I realized that the first 3 years, I didn't know anything. All right? So my students taught me a lot of things. And I'll share a lot of the things with you today that my students taught me. What I learned from my middle school and high school students are the things that I will share with you today. All right? And as a teacher, there were some things that I would do to motivate my students, and I knew that some of the classical ways, at least the ways that I grew up, weren't very effective for me, and I found them to be the same with my students. And so what I did was I did something that other teachers I know you don't do, and please forgive me for doing this, but I was a teacher who taught to the test. Yes, that's bad, right? So I taught to the test, which meant that I would give them all the materials, and then I would test them exactly on those materials. All right? And so we would go through the week, and I'd teach to the test, and every Friday we would have a pop quiz. Every Friday, a pop quiz. Right? Now, the interesting thing about having this pop quiz on Fridays was that my students were actually surprised that they knew the things on the pop quiz. That was every Friday. So they would go on the quiz and they go, I know this. And I'd be like, yeah, because I taught it, right? And so what I would like to do is give you a pop quiz. But for that pop quiz to be successful, what must I do first? I must teach you what's on the pop quiz. All right? So if you can please stand up, and I will teach you what will be on the pop quiz. So, the pop quiz goes like this. Fantastic. Terrific. Great. great all day long. Huh. All right, so let's practice. All right, fantastic, terrific, great, all day long. All right. So that's the quiz. That's the pop quiz. I mean, that's the answer, right? So now it's time for the question. And here is the question. Community United, how do you feel? Fantastic, terrific, great, all day long. All right. That was good practice. It is clear that we have Lutherans in the building. I happen to be an evangelical Pentecostal, and so we are just like Lutherans, except Lutherans are very excitable and stimulated people, but they keep that bottled up. All right? So I want you to let out your inner evangelical and just let it rip. All right? So here's the question. Community United, how do you feel? Fantastic. Terrific. Great. All day long. Good job. Give yourselves a hand.
You do the test.
You passed the test.
Oh, good.
You passed the test.
We don't have to wait for Friday?
You don't have to wait till Friday. Yes, sir.
I didn't get him to switch. I didn't switch. I already messed up the test.
Oh, no. That's fine. So let's do it right now. What I'd like you to do is look at your name tag and switch tables according to the color of your name tag. I'm not exactly sure what tables and that kind of stuff. Well, let's just take a couple minutes and make that change. Video. but before we talk about the rest of the stuff, wasn't the dog the funniest thing in the whole video? I thought that was that was funnier than the kid, right? So he wants attention, he wants to be picked up. What else is happening here?
He wanted attention from the animal, don't forget, because he went follow.
That's right. That's right. He wanted some attention from the animal as well, because the animal wasn't paying attention either, was he? All right. What else was happening here? There was a power struggle. Okay. What else?
He was exerting his energy.
He was exerting his energy. He was being ignored. He wants to be noticed. Okay.
He was moving into view of the camera all the time.
He was moving into view of the camera all of the time. Okay.
He was funny.
He was funny. He was funny.
He keeps doing the same thing and gets the same result.
He keeps doing the same thing and he gets the same result. Can we make the assumption that this is probably not the first time he's done this? Okay. So why do you think he's doing this? Because it worked last time. Right? When do you think he will stop doing this? When it no longer works. Right?
Not true.
How is that not true, Bob?
When I work with kids all the time that got problems like that.
Yeah.
And it takes maybe years for them to learn that it's not working anymore.
But they stop doing it when they figure it out, right?
Well, maybe when they're 20, 21.
If it takes till they're 20, 21, I'll take that over not doing it at all, right? And it's so funny when I taught, because I had, kids play games sometimes as teachers, if you figure that out, and kids would always say, I gotta go to the bathroom at a really crucial point, in the lesson. And I told them to sit. They say, well, I have to pee. And I say, well, I've never seen a 15-year-old pee on themselves. This will be entertaining. So I would suggest that, by the way. That's cruelty and punishment. But people do what they think what? Works. Right? So the child will continue to do that until he figures out that no longer works. And it might take until he's 22 to figure that out. I hope not. But that's when he'll stop doing it. All right? So this is a setup for analyzing and talking about my approach to doing diversity stuff. And the first thing about my approach is that I believe that people can learn, change, and grow. That who we used to be does not have to determine who we will be. That between who we were and who we want to be is an opportunity for us to learn, change, and grow. That we can change our behavior. We can change the way we see things or look at the world. We can change our paradigm. Secondly, that all human behavior is goal-directed. What do you think that means? That all human behavior is goal-directed. We have some kind of purpose in mind. Right? And it's so funny because as adults, we know that kids do things because they had some kind of purpose, they were trying to achieve something. But what do we get from kids when we say, why did you do that, Jeffrey? What does Jeffrey say? I don't know. Right? But we understand that they had some kind of goal in mind. All human behavior is goal-directed. And people do what makes sense to them, even if it doesn't make sense to who? To you. Right? Even if it doesn't make sense to you, they do it because they think it makes sense to them. An attitude is a response to a goal. All right? What have you been taught about an attitude? What is an attitude? It depends on what age.
Gotta remember, when the kid could find the camera, then he went down and started to cry at her. If he didn't see the camera,
That's right. If he didn't see the camera, he wouldn't fall down, but when he did see the camera, he did fall down. Right? So he had a goal to get that kind of attention. Right? So what is an attitude? What have you been told about an attitude? That they're positive or negative. What else?
on the way how you treat people.
Okay, it's how you treat people, right? You choose an attitude. I was always taught that an attitude was a result of external stimuli stimulating your emotions. Right? And it's so funny. My parents would tell me things because I was a teenager. Anybody a teenager? Anybody know a teenager? All right. And when I was a teenager, my parents, they were trying to use psychology to help shape my behavior. And so they would tell me things like, go to your room till you learn how to act. And so I'd be in my room for a while, and then I'd step out into the hallway and I'd say, to be or not to be? I spent a lot of time in my room. That's not what they were talking about, right? And it was really funny because I got really confused about what they meant as an attitude and how to change my attitude. And then it came to me like this. My dad is a pastor. And so on Sunday, we would go to church from 7 a.m. to 11:30 p.m. We'd stop at 3 o'clock for chicken. Not because we're black, but because chicken is delicious. So that's Sunday. So Friday night, I'd ask my dad for the card. What would my dad say?
You're not old enough.
No, he would say yes. My dad loves me. Right? So I take the card. I have fun with my friends. I would say my dad had what kind of an attitude? A good or a positive attitude. What would my father say about my attitude? What's that? I'm not going to wreck my dad's car, all right? Actually, I put gas in it and everything. So what does my dad say about my attitude? I have a good or a positive attitude. So my dad has a good attitude, I have a good attitude, right? Sunday comes along, my best friend calls me at 1 o'clock. He says, Andre, can you pick me up and go to the show? What do I know about Sunday? Church, right? I know what's going on. But I get the guts enough to ask my dad, and so I go up to my dad and I say, Dad, can I borrow the car? And what does my dad say? No. He says no, and he gives me a lecture. He's like, you're going to let people go to hell because you want to go to the, and it goes on and on and on. And so I say my dad has what kind of an attitude? A bad or negative attitude. And consequently, what does he say about my attitude? That is a negative or bad attitude. So what is it that determines a person's attitude? If you get what you want or not. We also call that a goal. If you reach your goal, you have a good attitude. If you don't reach your goal, you have a bad or poor attitude. Teenagers are great examples of this, right? You give them what they want, and it's almost like they purr. I love you. Right? Don't give them what they want, and what happens? They growl, right? And they are so funky. You're like, oh, what is that? Eggs? So an attitude, so if I encounter someone with a bad attitude, what is the one thing I know for sure about them?
They didn't get their goal.
They haven't been reaching their goal, right? So if I want to help them, then I have to figure out what that goal is so I can help them change their behavior. All right. So this is a portrait of my life thus far, and this is a picture of me in the black and white. Wasn't that a cute baby? And then this is my brothers and sisters. So that's me with the tie that's as big as my head, right? And that's my brother Will and my sister Crystal. And then these are my grandparents, and these are my two uncles, and that's my dad in the middle. And then this is my family in our Cosby years. Right? If you look real close, you can see Theo, Vanessa, and then the picture next to that, you can't see real well from your vantage point, but that was me in the 80s. And I have to tell you that I love Facebook and I hate Facebook all at the same time, right? Because I am now, I'm highly evolved. I do yoga, I eat organic, I have vermiculture, and I do manscaping, right? So I'm a highly involved individual. But people keep putting pictures up on Facebook of what I used to be, and it punches holes in my new persona, right? And so this is a picture of me in the 80s, and there's a picture of my friend Samisha, and I forgot who the girl in the middle is, and then there's me. And Samisha is holding an Uzi in her left hand, and I'm holding a double-barreled sawed-off shotgun. Now, I know that seems scary or maybe a little bit outlandish, but I'll give you a context that will make it even more scary. All right? So we were at a concert when we took this picture. And whether you know what the band plays or not, the type of music that they play or not, I think that the name of the band will give you the context from which we were coming from. Right? And the name of the band was Public Enemy. All right? Number one, that's right. So we were at a Public Enemy concert, and I'm glad that I don't have to be who I was. But I am my father's son. In 1968, what was going on in the world? What kinds of things were happening in the world? Vietnam was happening. All right, what else? Okay, Martin Luther King Jr. was around. Okay, I forgot to tell you something. I am African American. Oh. Yeah, I didn't want anybody to be surprised. Okay? So I'm African American, and my parents were African American. And so what one event in 1968 had a profound impact on my African American parents? The assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King. And so in 68, they graduated from high school. My dad turned 18, and he said, I want to do something about the assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King. And my grandfather said, great, do it someplace else. Because he wasn't having all that foolishness, right? So my dad goes off to college, and he becomes something called a Black Panther. Now, I don't know what you know about Black Panthers and what you think you know about Black Panthers, but primarily they were a political party that was orchestrating how to lift up poor people, and specifically poor Black people, so that they could have the access that everyone else has. And one of the things that is still around, a remnant, if you will, of the Panther Party is something called the Federal School Lunch Program. And the federal government said, Panthers, that was such a great idea, we will smash you and take your program. All right? And so my father was a Black Panther. And then in 1970, the most amazing, incredible, beautiful thing that could ever happen to my father happens. I was born. And at that point, he realizes that the revolution is no place for a family, and that the retirement plan for revolutionaries sucks. So he leaves the revolution, and he gets an L7 square job, a 9-to-5, if you will. And on that job, he gets a call from God. Now, what happens when you get a call from God? You answer, right? I was in another training and someone said, you run! And I'm like, where? So my father got a call from God, and God called my father to be an evangelical, fire and brimstone preacher. Hallelujah, yeah! I am my father's son. So in my presentation, it might get a little bit political. It's not my fault. It also might seem like I'm preaching to the choir, but in the words of my father, the choir needs preaching too. So here we go. So first of all, I need to clear the air about some things. First of all, I saw a number of hands of people who have been in diversity trainings. Some of us obviously haven't, but we've all talked about diversity in some kind of way. And so, can someone please give me a definition of diversity? It's prejudice. Okay? Accepting differences. What's that? Just say it anyway. Differences. What else?
Listening.
It's listening. Yes. It's what? It's not judging. It's being together. Yes. It's respecting differences. Okay, let me just If I ask 100 people, how many answers would I get about diversity? 100. You all fail. If I'm a teacher and I'm grading on vocabulary, and each one of my students gives me a different definition for the same word, there's something wrong, right? What's that? I haven't taught the word yet. Right? And I haven't given you the pop quiz, right? But there's something wrong if we all have a different definition of the same word, right? I mean, this is what? This is scissors. And what do scissors do? They cut. If I called this an anvil, I'd have a problem, wouldn't I? Right? So we need to talk about like what diversity is, because it's become pretty strange. All right? So we'll talk about what it is. I'm going to talk first about what it's not. All right? So diversity is not political correctness. Now, in the 90s, we did a really good job of pausing people before they said dumb stuff. Political correctness. But we all know that political correctness has become what?
A joke.
It's a joke. It's a bad joke, right? I mean, a janitor's no longer a janitor. They are a custodial engineer. And it's funny, people don't even know how to call each other things anymore, right? Someone was talking about someone in our office, and they were like, it's that one guy, the guy with arms. I was like, the black guy? They're like, yeah, him, right? It's become so convoluted that we can't have authentic conversations. And I remember being in a training, and a woman stands up and she says, Andre, I just want to know, why are all the colored people moving into my neighborhood? How do you think the audience responded to that? They were like, and why did they go, because it's not politically correct. You're not supposed to say that, right? So I look at this woman, and it's very clear to me that she does not have a lot of stamps in her passport. That her educational level has been limited, that she doesn't know all the fancy vocabulary that other people have, but she stood up and she asked a question. And so what was my responsibility to her? To answer her question. All the political correct stuff we can talk about later, but I have to honor the fact that she was brave enough with the language and the way she knew how to talk to ask the question, to engage in the conversation, even though she didn't know all the fancy words. Because I've also been in conversation with people who did know those fancy words, and as they're talking, my skin just crawls. Ugh. Have you ever had conversations with those people? Because you can hear the nastiness in their heart, even though they're using the right words. So diversity is not about political correctness. And it's not just about black and white. Let me just say that, right? It's not just about black and white. But why do we keep talking about it in terms of black and white? Because that's a metaphor that we can understand. It's easy to talk about it when we can use that as our metaphor, as opposed to just being a racial construct. And one thing I do know is that I cannot go to calculus until I have passed algebra. So we keep having these same old conversations about race in this black and white metaphor because we haven't learned all the lessons to move on to something else. But what I'd like to offer you is that we can learn some lessons and we can start to apply those starting today. All right? Next is diversity. Diversity is not about therapy. A lot of times, trainers, it seems like trainers get really happy when they make people cry. Or they get people to tell really, really sad stories and that kind of stuff. And that has its place. That's just not my place. All right? So diversity is not about therapy. It's also not about meritocracy. And meritocracy is the concept that if you work hard enough, you can be just like me. What's the problem with that concept? It's not true? Maybe. But what if I don't want to be like you? Right? I mean, it would be a shame for LeBron James to play basketball like I do. That would be a shame, right? So it's not about meritocracy. And lastly, sister. I love her husband, my brother-in-law. I love their kids. But my brother-in-law came to visit, and I tolerated that dude. Why did I tolerate my brother-in-law? Because I knew when he was going home. Typically, when we talk about tolerance, what we imply is I am going to put up with this until I no longer have to. Are our communities getting less diverse? I would hope not. Are our human relations getting more complicated? I would say yes. And so tolerance isn't the end result that we should be working for. So I hear some of the thought bubbles, right? I hear people saying, well, isn't political correctness and isn't meritocracy and isn't tolerance, aren't those good first steps to diversity? And my answer is simply this. Babies drink milk. Why do babies drink milk? Because it helps them grow. But why milk specifically?
It's also good for the bones and that.
It's good for the bones. Yes. What else?
They aren't developed enough for steak.
They're not developed enough for steak, right? So babies drink milk because that's the first level of nourishment that they can get. But at some point, babies move from milk to tofu. I'm a vegetarian. Part-time. I guess that makes me an omnivore, right? So political correctness, meritocracy, and tolerance, those are great first steps. But oftentimes we treat those as if they are the prize at the end of the race. And I like to just offer that they're paths on to the end of the race. So what do you suggest, Andre? You just told us what diversity is not. So can you tell us what diversity is? And as a matter of fact, I think I might have an answer. All right? Diversity is the fact that there is dignity and honor in being human. What is dignity?
How proud you feel about yourself.
How proud you feel about yourself. What else is dignity? Feeling like you have worth. Dignity. Caring what other people think of you. Is dignity something that you have or something that you give? It is in fact both. Right? So that's right, you can learn it. Right? So you have dignity. Now, there are folks, I used to live in South Minneapolis, and now live in Mounds View, but in South Minneapolis, there are all these guys and young ladies who hold these cardboard signs, and the cardboard on the highway, and the cardboard signs say, we'll work for food, we'll work for money, all that kind of stuff, right? And so I'm a very giving person. So I give them things. Guess what I don't give them? Money, right? Because if you feed a stray cat, it'll keep coming back, right? So you don't do that. I don't give them money, but guess what I do give them? Dignity. And how do I give that dignity? Oftentimes, if I have the time, I'll strike up a conversation and ask them how their day was, or I'll listen to their story. And when I don't have the time to have those conversations, I look them in the eye. Dignity is about recognizing that I exist. Because if you don't give people dignity, they will try and take it. Now, I don't know if this has happened to you, but this happens to me all the time. I'm at a stop sign or I'm at a stoplight, and there's a group of teenagers who are crossing the street. And one might think that because they are young, they can get across the street a little bit faster. I used to think it was because their pants were hanging too low and they had to do all that. But what I realized is they are trying to get dignity from me. So as they walk across the street, they meet me eyeball to eyeball as they cross the street, as if to say, I dare you to hit me. Right? You don't see me any other time, but you're going to see me right now. What they don't know is that I don't have any points on my license and very good car insurance. All right. So dignity. What is honor?
Honor is how good
feel about yourself? What is honor?
It shows that you have deserved the respect of other people through the years and that.
Okay, so honor says that you've earned the respect of other people through the years. What else is honor? Honor. It's respect. Okay? All right, Senator Obama. Senator Obama. I'm downtown Chicago, and I see Senator Obama. I affectionately call him OB. So I see him downtown Chicago, and I say, "Hey, what's up, OB?" And he says, "Hey, Andre, how are you?" And so I come over to OB, and I give him respect. And so we do the whole hand thing, boom, 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 with the exploding fist at the end, right? Because that's what he likes to do. I just gave Senator Obama respect. Senator Obama now becomes the highest office in the land. President Obama! So how do I greet now President Obama? I don't. Okay? But if I try to do it the same way, it might look like this. "Hey man, how you doing?" Ah! Right? Secret Service would be all over me. Right? Unless I was in Florida, but that's a whole other conversation. Right? So why do I treat President Obama differently than I would Senator Obama?
Because he in the past.
Okay, because I knew him in the past. What else? Why would I treat him differently? Because his position is higher. I give the position honor. Right? So who in our society have we said that we will give honor to?
The ones who've proven it through the years.
Okay, so who are those people who have proven it through the years? Your bosses. We said we will give our bosses honor only because they're here. Who else have we said? Yes, ma'am. People in power. All right, who else?
Abraham Lincoln.
Friends. Abraham Lincoln. Our spouses, because they're here too, right? People in authority. We've said that we will give our parents and grandparents, servicemen and women who fight on our behalf, we will give them honor. So that's respect at a high level. All right? And lastly, so my mother just had a birthday. She is now 61. And so we used to talk about current events, and we used to talk about, what's going on in the world, and now we talk about the cafeteria plans at the hospital. And we talk about how her hormones are shifting body parts, right? So I kind of had enough, and I was like, "Mom, can we stop talking about that because it's pretty depressing," right? And she broke down and she said, "Andre, I've never been 61 before." And I said, "Yeah, like 60 so different." But what I realized was that she is in a new world trying to figure out what it means to be who she is right now. And as I look at hitting 41, I'm still trying to figure out what it means to be 40. Right? If people ask, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I'm embarrassed to say, I don't know. But we're all trying to figure out what it means to be human. What is our purpose? Why am I here? How do I exhibit that purpose? We're all trying to figure out what it means to be here. All right? Please raise your hand if you either you passed a test or you bought a ticket that made you eligible to be born on this planet. None of us have done anything to bring ourselves here. We all accepted an invitation. I don't want to think about how that invitation came. That's disgusting. But we all accepted an invitation to be here. And we're all trying to figure out what our purpose is. All right? And lastly, when I saw the word human, and I was like, oh, I need to look this up. So I looked it up, and I was surprised to find that it has two definitions. One is that of a noun, right? So the human being, having two legs, being a biped, having opposable thumbs, a big brain, and a belly button. If you ever encounter someone without a belly button, be concerned. do. They describe nouns, right? So before I go any further, I need to say this because I got in trouble with a lawyer once, and so now I try to make sure I clear the path for this. This next part, what I'm not implying is that animals don't have emotion. I'm not implying that animals don't have feelings or sentience or the ability to make choices. But what I am saying is that there are ways that I expect human beings to interact with each other that if my dog did, I would be surprised. So what are some of the ways that we expect human beings to interact with each other? To talk, to speak, right? To get clarity. What else?
To listen.
To listen. To not only hear the words, but also hear the content of those words. To hear the heart. What else? What's that? Then we have eye contact. That not only do we see the physical person, but we try to look into that situation to see the other parts of that person. What else? Cooperate. That we cooperate. That we look and see how we can work together to build something collaboratively. Right? So that's what it means to be human. And so I would like to offer to you that diversity means everything that you mentioned as well. But I want you to think of it in terms of this. What would happen if you received all the dignity and honor that you deserve, not because you did something, but because you exist as a human being? Yes, sir.
You mentioned eye contact. I don't remember what culture it would be, but if you look at that culture, if you were in that culture, and you looked him in the eye, that would be a sign of disrespect.
Yes, and I can't disagree with that. Right?
Yeah, but you're kind of teaching diversity. That doesn't have something to do with culture as well.
Yeah, but we haven't gotten to culture. And we probably won't get a chance to talk a lot about culture.
Okay.
We'll allude to culture. But I do have to tell you that culture is only secondary to what is in your heart. Right? So if I go to a culture that I don't understand, and I say, I know everything about this culture, or the way I think is right and the way they think is wrong, I have a bad heart. And so when I interact with that culture, they're probably not going to be very helpful. But if I go into another culture that I'm not familiar with an open heart and willingness to learn about what's going on, I'm probably going to get a lot more help and a lot more leeway when I make mistakes of things I don't know about. Right? So those are kind of heart conditions that one can think about. Because I make faux pas all the time and when I interact with cultures that I'm not familiar with. But because my heart is pure and I'm trying to do the right thing, I think I get some leeway, right? And I would say that could be the same for you. All right. Any other questions before we move on?
You
Yes,
got
sir.
honor that also shows for the ones that have stick up for other people and that too.
Yes. So honor goes to people who also stand up for other people. All right.
And then you went and forgot the other term.
Which was
If a bunch of white people move into a colored people area,
Yeah.
how do the colored people have that they don't want them there?
well, sometimes that happens, right? Sometimes that happens. He's talking about different groups moving into different groups' neighborhoods, and the example that he gave was white people moving into a black community that maybe they don't want them there either. But for me, I think it's all the same. We have to figure out how to work together, because I don't have the right to tell you where you can or cannot live, all right? Or who you can or cannot love, or who you can or cannot be friends with, all right? Any question? Any other questions? Comments? Does this stuff make sense? Yeah. Okay. Cool. We're gonna do one more thing, and then we'll take a short break because I feel energy going down. Is that right? Okay. So we'll do one more thing, and let's see. Do I want to do that? No. I don't want to do that either. So we'll skip to this. All right. So on your table, there is a card that looks like this. You should have a blue card that looks like this. And hopefully you have a writing utensil pencil of some sort.
I don't have it.
Up, it's right on the table. Deja vu.
I don't think I'm writing the pencil that are right on this.
Okay, you may not. But this will be an opportunity for you to do the best you can. All right. So what I'd like for you to do is you should have a card that looks like this, and I want you to talk about what it is that you learned growing up. All right. And the way that I want you to talk about this is that these are the groups that you've learned things from, and these are the groups that you've learned things about across the top. All right? So, what did you learn from your family and friends about from your parents and family about African Americans? What did you learn from your friends about African Americans? What did you learn from school and workplace about African Americans, TV and movies, so forth and so on? But I want you to answer these questions in a specific way. All right? What I'd like for you to do is to put a plus in any of these categories where you learn something positive. Where you learn something positive, I want you to put a plus. Where you learn something negative, I want you to put a minus. All right? Where you didn't learn anything, I want you to put a 0. All right? And also, you can have pluses and minuses in the same box. But the size of the plus and the size of the minus will determine how much you learn. So if you learn a lot of positives, then you'll have a really big plus. And if you learn a little bit of negative, you'll have a little minus. All right? Is that relatively clear? All right, cool. And are there folks who don't have cards? However you want to define the answers to those questions. However you want to define them. Is it what you actually learned, or what people taught you, what you really believe, what you don't believe, friends now, friends of the past, however you want to define them. I know the cards are a little slippery, and I appreciate your tenacity. Do the best you can, given its circumstances. It's also in your handout. If that works a little better for you. Oh no, it's not in this handout. I'm sorry. It was in the other handout.
still food left. If anyone wants food, let me know. There's still food left. Those who came in late would like to get something to eat. We still have some left.
You might have
that you all have different backgrounds. All right?
Regardless of our age of our table, a lot of our negatives, the majority of our negatives came from our family.
Okay, so at your table, the majority of your negatives came from your families, no matter what your age was. All right? Other folks? Yes?
The media is certainly a disservice to.
That media is certainly a disservice. Okay? Other things or things that you talked about at your
The
table.
way that you learn stuff, like a lot of people have said that I have been out on the street more and then too damn streetwise in that.
Okay.
And I am mostly by myself.
Okay, so
I
you're
enjoy it that way.
Okay, so
I'm
you're pretty
happy
street.
I'm out.
Yeah, you're street smart. Okay, I saw a hand back here. Yes, sir. Okay, so your friends are pretty neutral. Okay, great, great, great. Other things. So I'm interested because I don't need to know what you have positives and negatives in or what you have zeros on. There's not a scorecard. I won't be collecting these, and this won't be your ticket to Nirvana or anything like that. But I am curious about your process when completing this card. What kinds of things came to your mind, or what kind of emotions were stimulated as you had to deconstruct what you've learned and who you've learned things from? So as you went through the card, filling out the pluses and the minuses and the zeros, were there any emotions or any thoughts that came to your head as you were doing the process?
Well, mine was anger at my parents for being so negative about not being diverse.
Okay? So anger at your parents for not being so diverse. Okay?
For teaching me the negative about diversity.
For teaching you the negative about diversity. Okay? You're upset at your parents about that. Yes, sir.
Mine was just the opposite.
Okay? More information.
I grew up with the African American. My dad worked with them side by side in the brickyard and the steel mill. I went to school with them. I played ball with them, ate in their homes, ate in my home. And same with the Latinos as well. Asians, Native Americans are not in my community. I come from a small community of about 2,500 people. But the black man and the white man mutually bonded well together. And so I was taught that at home and in school. When I went to school, the white man and the black man, they didn't exist. It was transparent.
That's cool.
Never thought of it.
That is cool. That is cool. Other thoughts as you were going through the card? Other things that you thought about? Yes, ma'am. And I'll get it hand over here. Yes, ma'am.
I'm looking at my card with my negatives and I'm not happy with myself.
Okay, so you're looking at your card with your negatives and you're not happy about yourself. Okay. There was another voice. Yes.
Jessica said it, but I thought the same thing. She said your words were, my dad was a good guy, but he was like this. And that's exactly how I felt. They were a good they're a good person, but their attitude was
Okay. So they were good people, but their attitude was bad. Yeah. How do we? Oh, wait a minute. Yes, sir.
Might come as a shock to you, but like for me, I wasn't even worried about that card.
Oh, really? You weren't even worried about it? Okay. Cool. What? So how do we reconcile the fact that because what I don't want is it is not necessary for you to be upset with the people who taught you the limited things that they knew, right? It has come to my understanding, and I look at the failures of my parents, and it's easy for me to get upset at what they should have done, what they could have done, and what they didn't. But when I realized that my parents did the best they could with what they had, I was able to give them some more leeway. They did the best they could with what they had. But it's now my responsibility to take what they gave me and expand on that. Right? I don't want people to feel bad about themselves because the situation that we find ourselves in this culture, none of us created it. None of us in a sense, did it. But we have to figure out ways to undo somebody else's mess.
I wouldn't really go along with that because you gotta remember, people did the best that they could back at that time because there were limitations.
There were limitations to what you could do, what you knew, where you could go, and there were limitations, and people did the best they could. All right? And I'm going to stretch out on a limb and say this, and I want you to hear it from my heart, even if my words aren't as articulate as my heart is. It is important that white people are proud about being white.
What they are.
Now, when I say that, I'm not talking about walking around with, crucifixes and berating other people, but I learned this on the airport. On the airplane. What the stewardess says is, when that thing falls down from the top of the console, what are you supposed to do? Put the mask on yourself and then help somebody else. Right? What does guilt, what kinds of energy does guilt, fault, and blame create? Negative. So when people are feeling negative, are they more inclined or less inclined to be helpful? Less inclined. Right? And so one of the things and I know it sounds weird to hear a diversity trainer say he wants white people to feel good about being white. Or that he wants white people to be, or a black man to say he wants white people to be proud about being white. I know that sounds kind of weird, but I want you to think about it. If you can't take the oxygen yourself, you are no good to me. If you're drowning and I can't swim, I'm not going to go out there and I'm going to call 911. Right? So it's important that we figure out ways to love who we are without having to put someone else down. And I'll give you some tools on how to do that tonight. All right? One of the other things is, whatever you learned in this chart is not your fault. It's not your fault what people brought to you, what curriculum they had for you. That's not your fault. However, it is now your responsibility. How many people have driven in a car or ridden in a car? Does that car have blind spots? Yes. And where typically are those blind spots? Okay, the rear of the car. Where else? On the sides. Okay. Where else? Up. Okay, up. And if you drive a Hummer, the whole thing is a blind spot. Right? Are those blind spots your fault? They are not your fault. But they are your what? Responsibility. Now, the interesting thing about blind spots, there's two ways to find out about a blind spot. The first way is you can what? Crash into something, right? Like, oh, that blind spot, I didn't know that. Right? But what's the other way that you can find out about a blind spot? You have to look for it. And I know that's even weirder, right? I have to look for something that I don't know exists. So do I have some prejudicial feelings or am I bigoted? The only way that I will find that out is if I look for it. Because the people who have that and who aren't looking for it have no problems with it. I was at a workshop this morning and a young lady stood up and she said, Andre, I am so tired of being the one that has to explain my culture. I always have to tell people about my culture. I'm so tired of it. And I just laughed and I smiled. And I said, do you know why you're tired? And she was like, no, I don't really know, but I'm just tired of doing it. I said, you're tired because you're doing the work. If it's not you, who's it going to be? And I said, if you're so tired, stop doing it. And guess what she said to me? I can't stop doing it. Then shut up and keep working out. Right? I said, make sure that you do whatever education that you have. You go home and you surround yourself with people who build you up and make you feel good so you can go back out there the next day and go right back at it. that's what we have to do, right? We have to be those ambassadors and all that stuff. So I want you, however you left that card, I want you to think about that stuff. It's not your fault, but it is your responsibility. Any place that you have zeros, that's not a deficit. It's not a bad thing. It is an opportunity for you to learn something different and explore something different. Something else that often happens, particularly with black people, and so I can let you in on some of the things that we talk about, right? So we'll hear a white person say, well, I have one Asian friend. And then we'll laugh at it. I got tons of Asian friends, right? Or I have one black friend. And they'll get laughed at. Has anybody ever heard somebody have that experience where they get laughed at because they said, I had one, or something like that, right? One of the things that I think is really interesting is if you have one black friend, that's great. If you have one Asian friend, that's great. Because the likelihood of multiplying that friendship is greater than if you don't have any at all. So whatever accomplishment, however you say you're trying to be diverse, is good as long as you're trying to do something. Because the people who do evil don't think about the evil they do. A lot of times they just keep going on with their lives and don't give it a second thought. All right? So I want to encourage you to keep up with these conversations long after I'm gone. All right? So let's keep moving. Any questions, comments?
Yeah, you want to figure out one other thing, like some people are afraid to go in a small airplane or different things in that.
Yep, some people are afraid to go into small airplanes. All right, so here we go. I'm going to skip that. This is very interesting. All right. I may need to reboot something just really quick.
That was coming down.
Thank you for being patient with this technical difficulty. I just need to open up another presentation.
Some of the stuff that you do right now, I would have to learn how to do that.
Yes, you might have to learn what I'm.
56 years old.
You might have to learn how to do that.
But it's more fun throwing the tomatoes.
I never have run any.
Oh, you haven't been at theater much, have you?
I haven't even been in a food place.
Those aren't as much fun. The food place? I apologize for this minor inconvenience.
But you gotta remember, apologizing is human.
Yes, apologizing is human. Let me get to my punchline here. It's so funny, you get so used to being in a rhythm, and then when that rhythm's broken, you kind of go, oh. All right, so here we go. So I want to talk about this episode of this television show that comes on ABC called What Would You Do? Has anyone seen that show? Okay. What they do is they do some kind of ethical dilemma, and they see how people respond to it. And I came across this show by accident. I have to be honest that I love Dancing with the Stars. And this particular episode was very interesting of Dancing with the Stars. It was the season with Priscilla Presley. You guys remember that? And I was just astonished because she was one of those white ladies in the 70s and 80s that everybody wanted to be like, right? It was like her and Bo Derek and Jane Kennedy and I was just joking. Jane Kennedy's not. Anyway, and so I'm going to show a clip, and then I want to have some